All right, welcome everyone to this episode of Shirley Talk. I am Mike Mulroney.
I'm Kelly Duckworth.
Thank you, Kelly. And Kelly, we go through this every time, but just to make sure, are you a doctor or a tax person, accountant, anything in the professional fields?
Nope, not
Psychologist?
since the last time, no.
How about a psychiatrist?
No.
Nothing? All right. We point that out because we do these podcasts to help educate people on what people fighting cancer, caretakers, different things, and educate people on what others deal with, and by no means take anything that her and I say or our guests say as gospel. Please check with a professional before you take anything we say that could affect your life. So with that said, we have our good friend Jessica here today. How are you?
I'm well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. We just had Amanda in here talking about her colon cancer experience, and when I was talking to Amanda a few weeks ago, it hit me that I think it'd be a great show to talk about what you went through, because your mom, and I know a little bit about your story, but I'd love to talk about it, but you lost your mom at a very early age to colon cancer. Is that right?
I did.
Is that the reason why you have blue on today?
It is. This is colon cancer blue. It's the color of the ribbon that represents colon cancer. So
We need to get a blue cancer suck shirt, don't we? Or a jacket.
Jacket.
Yeah,
I was
we
going to
keep
say, I
adding
know you
jackets.
have a blue cancer suck shirt because when Amanda was diagnosed, I called you right up. And
Yeah. Well, we've been buying sport coats once a
Okay.
year to represent for the month. So colon cancer month, is it got a month?
It's March. There's a colon cancer prevention month in March.
Okay, we may have to pick one of those up next year. Last year we got our pink cancer sucks sport coats that we do on our raffles. Originally had orange, and then we recently got what was supposed to be a goldish yellow color. It's a little darker for childhood cancer in September, so we'll have to get us a blue one. Plus, it's UK blue, which is even better for me. So
I mean, I don't vote for that, but colon cancer all the way. Support that for sure.
Two Cardinal
for that.
If you're not from Kentucky, then you don't understand the battle. If you walk across the state line, you have to decide you're either going to cheer for the Cardinals or the Wildcats. So that's the battle going on.
It is.
So your mom was diagnosed with colon cancer, and I think you said earlier you were 10 years old.
I was 10 years old. She had just turned 40. And a little background, my mom had an aunt that had passed away from cancer before she turned 40. And my mom had always said she was concerned that she would also pass away young, which today, to me, I understand as a mom how concerning that would be. But I also think that it probably consumed her more than she preferred.
Well, with that said, Amanda just left here and said she was diagnosed at 37. Her girls are going to have to start getting colonoscopies at a very young age. So did they even talk about that when she was diagnosed?
Well, I don't know that they talked about that then. Probably not, because colon cancer treatment and awareness has come very far. It's very different. I would say that if my mom was diagnosed today, she would have probably lived. Amanda was diagnosed with the exact same diagnosis, same tumor location as my mom. But it was 25 years. Well, she has been dead 25 years. In December, it will be 26. So when Amanda was diagnosed, it had been more than 20 years since my mom had been alive and diagnosed. So we talked a lot about that, how different, the aggression and things with treatment were today.
But I think if you have a parent that is diagnosed with cancer, you are supposed to get tested for whatever cancer it is within 10 years of that age.
That's the recommendation with colorectal cancer. She was diagnosed at 40. I started having my screenings at 25.
Okay.
And I have two older brothers, and they were recommended the same.
But I bet in the late 90s or mid 90s, that I'm just curious in the medical field if that has changed over the years, or back in the 90s, maybe they didn't make that recommendation because if her mom had a history of it.
Her mom did not.
Oh, okay. I thought it said it was a family.
It was her aunt, and it was not colorectal cancer. It was pancreatic cancer. But she was so similar to her that she always feared that she would have a cancer diagnosis young also, and to the point that she told my dad, I don't want to have kids past 30. She had me when she was 29.
So she had been thinking about it for years.
Yeah, and I think it probably consumed her in an unhealthy way, right? As far as, I mean, I don't think she was obsessed with it, but I think that it caused some major anxiety when she was planning out her life. And obviously there's lots of conversations I didn't get to have as an adult since I was young when she went through that and passed away. But, my dad is a great resource, and some of her friends and my aunts that she was super close to, we've talked a lot about those things.
So he turned into a Mr. Mom pretty quickly. Of course, she died when you were 14.
I was 14. She was diagnosed so my mom had a full health workup when she turned 40, and she was deemed healthy. She turned 40 in February. In April, she went to the doctor for rectal bleeding, and she was diagnosed with cancer. Now, back then, they didn't do radiographs, x-rays, all that scans. They literally found her tumor at the base of her rectum. The doctor inserted his finger in her rectum and found the tumor and felt the tumor. She went and had surgery. That doctor was recommending a colostomy at the time, and my mom did not want to have a colostomy if it wasn't absolutely necessary. She had grown up with a friend next door whose husband had a colostomy, and she just remembered how much, he went through. That there was odor and there was vanity and different things associated with that. And she adored him and never thought different of him, but knew that she didn't want to deal with that if she didn't have to. So she had the tumor removed by that surgeon, but had a second opinion at the Brown Cancer Center. So that doctor looked at the margins from the tumor, the pathology. It was cancer, but they looked like that they had, there was no cancer in the margins, according to that doctor. So they decided not to do a colostomy at that time. So she went on to have chemotherapy for a year. She had her max of radiation. She had 6 weeks of radiation chemo for a year. And then she was deemed at that time, they don't use the word as early now, but deemed at that time in remission. And she was in remission for 1 year. And then January of 1995, her liver numbers were elevated in her blood work. And so they went in and did a scan at that time, found that it was in her liver, and found that there were some tumors in her liver that had been killed from the treatment, but it had spread at that point. And so that was in January, the Monday after Easter that year. She had her colostomy. And she still didn't want to have it, and the doctor told her, if you don't, you will die a very painful death. That's literally the words he told her. And I remember her telling us that. And so she had her colostomy surgery the Monday after Easter in April of that year, and she passed away 2 days after Christmas.
It's unbelievable.
So do you think if she would have gotten the colostomy bag when the first doctor recommended it, that she'd still be here?
I don't know.
We've
said that all the time. I mean, we've said it from day one. I don't know. The reality is with the treatment, so different. She went to Vanderbilt. She was going to participate in a study. My dad reminded me today that when I talked to him that, they had told them there's really nothing else that we can do. And she said, I'm going to continue to get treatment just in case. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had young children. Right. I was 14. My brother Jamie was 16. My brother Jason was 21 at the time. And so she kept fighting, and she actually continued to seek treatment. We went to Florida that year for 2 weeks of vacation with some family members. She had treatment in Florida while we were there. And then she had treatment until till the end.
It sounds like my mom. She just didn't want to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Like she, I think, still had a sliver of hope up until the day she died.
Yeah.
Didn't they diagnose your mom as being cancer-free for a little while, and then it came back?
In her liver and lungs.
I just, and I'm not mad at the medical community, but I really feel like we miss things sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, of course, back in the late 90s, there was not, and they had a lot of good medical information back then, but probably not as much as they are today.
No. And I mean, as I walked alongside Amanda's journey with her and watched the way that
new stuff.
I mean, it was just obviously, and she fought a hard fight herself with amazing tenacity, and just, I can't even get to talking about that because I could certainly cry. But it was crazy to see the difference in the treatment options, the way that they aggressively pursued that. So my mom was going to go to Vanderbilt because they, at the time, had said that they had found that a treatment that they were using for breast cancer was working with colon cancer. So they drove down there, her hoping to get in this trial.
Two opposite ends of the spectrum, obviously.
Right. Exactly. And they drove down there for her to be in the trial, and they said, oh, we're sorry, you can't because you've had radiation. And they had learned that people that had had radiation had debilitating diarrhea to the point that they thought it might kill her if she participated from the dehydration. So, hope there and then shattered. But, you know, my mom, me being as young as I was, we had difficult conversations. But at the same time, there's a lot of things, obviously, today that I would ask that I didn't know to then. Because I'll tell you, I mean, a week before she died, my mom wasn't going to die because that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, today, obviously, I have different conversations with my kids, and my parents didn't shelter us, but, you know, we weren't in on all the details of treatment. And when I watched Amanda go through that, she was so open and honest with her girls. And, you know, I don't fault my parents for that because as parents, we try to protect our kids. But I think that was exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, her kids were living that with her and they knew. And I think that the way she handled that was exactly right.
Well, they see mom going downhill, which
Right.
I told Amanda. I've told her before. She's the ultimate badass. I didn't even know she was sick, and she hid it that well. And,
Oh, yeah.
And you know, she's just like, you know, I learned at an early age. You just got to suck it up. Nobody wants to hear you complaining. And when somebody told me she was sick, I was like, no, she doesn't. She looks like she normally does. And but she was, and she just sat here and told us the battle she dealt. It was crazy, but yeah, I just don't understand the medical system, and again, I just feel like they miss stuff. But you know, they do the best they can. But you know, my mom had liver cancer. The guy told us there wasn't nothing they could do. I was like, bullshit. It's 2013. You're gonna fix this.
Right.
And today, like you just said, it doesn't seem real that your mom died. Granted, I was older. I just can't imagine being at 10 and watching, you know, what they do.
You know, a lot of people say that to me, and I would say that what I always say to people when they say, you lost your mom so young, and that's true, and I did, and it was terrible, and it changed the trajectory of my life. I was so blessed with a wonderful dad, an excellent support system of family that really have always been there and would have been had she still lived. I mean, they're just close that way. But I would say that there's people whose parents live till they're, you know, 50 and their parents are 70 or 80 and they just don't have a good relationship. And so, you know, I mean, I could still consider it a gift that, you know, I had her for when I did. I can remember her. There's a lot of people who can't. My husband lost his dad when he was 8. You know, there's a lot of difference between what you can remember between 8 and 14.
Oh yeah. I don't remember much, to be honest.
Right. You know, so, you know, there's still blessings there that I consider. And, you know, had God given me a different mom who wasn't going to have cancer, I wouldn't want it. You know, I would want the mom I had for a small amount of time as I got her. Yeah, you know, it's hard to be a girl and go through all the things, right, that mamas are there for. It's hard. It's tough to not have a wedding and proms and babies and all those things. But again, you know, my kids, they know who she was as best as we can portray her to be. We talk about her all the time. My dad still to this day. I mean, just, Ma'am, I'll share you this, or she would have said this, or remember that time she this. So, you know, we're very blessed that she is still as much a part as she can be, right, in our story. And then colon cancer prevention and conversation is huge in our family. I mean,
course.
I'll talk to anybody about their colon, and it makes people really uncomfortable. But when I was volunteering at the Colon Cancer Prevention Project for a few years, I mean, that was the thing, you know. It is an uncomfortable location in your body, and so people don't want to talk about it.
That's what we just talked about on Amanda's podcast.
Yeah, she said, and we didn't cover this, and it's interesting you brought that up because it's not fun conversation, but you have to make it fun and comical, or people aren't going to do it. And she pointed out guys, and I agree, guys are horrible. We're sissies. To that kind of thing.
Sure.
I'm not a sissy, I promise you. but you know, you all go for annual exams. Y'all are kind of used to that. Guys aren't, and it's a modesty thing, and we got to get past that, or we're going to keep dropping dead from this disease that can be cured pretty easily if it's caught early enough.
Well, it's very preventable. I don't know the statistics today if they've changed in the last couple years since I haven't been as involved with the Colon Cancer Prevention Project. But when I was working with them, the statistics were 90% preventable. And the statistics were also, back then, it was still screening at 50. And for the African-American male community in the city of Louisville, they said at the time that more African-American men died from colon cancer than homicide.
I didn't know that.
In the west end of Louisville.
That's interesting. Our homicide rate's up right now.
Right. So that was then, but they recommended that African-American men were screened at 45 instead of 50.
So we need to be down at the west end or wherever promoting this because that's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's not obviously just the west end, but, in our
sorry,
city.
I shouldn't say,
no,
that's
what
right.
I said.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the statistic that they gave. And now there are other screening methods also with the Cologuard and the FIT test as far as options. And those are great options, especially for people who have this stigma about this exam. But I would tell you, and my gastroenterologist would tell you that that is not as good at detecting as colonoscopy. So, I mean, you take a break, you spend a little time on the pot, and then you have a real good nap the next day and it's over and you don't remember any of it. And, it's way easier than chemotherapy.
It really is.
And that's what I tell people.
And dying.
It's way easier than chemo or losing your hair or watching someone you love go through that. So let's talk about it. And it was funny. The poop emoji coming out was like the best thing for colon cancer ever because it just kind of took that stigma away. And you got to decorate with that and you got to send an email with that. And, just silly things that kind of lighten the mood for the conversation.
Several years ago, I've had several colonoscopies because I used to travel all the time. I was gone 80% of the time and with my job. And I was in Mexico every other week for a year.
Wow.
And I started having all kinds of problems. And I was convinced that I had colon cancer. But they did these tests, couldn't find anything. I was still having problems. And they thought it was Crohn's and it was this and it was that. And eventually it went away, but I guess I got some sort of bug from Mexico that was causing me to have all these problems, and I've been fine. But I had convinced myself that I had colon cancer. But I had so many of those tests, and honestly, the worst part of a colonoscopy is starving yourself the day before. Right. I'm a big guy. I like to eat.
Right.
And to not be able to eat anything, the last one I had a headache so bad that night, but I was scared to take Advil because I didn't want it to me show up the next day and they say, "Oh, you took Advil last night. You can't do it." And I was like, "I'm getting through this."
Right. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, I'm not. But that's the worst part to me is not being able to eat the day before.
I agree. And I'll tell you, it's funny. I started them at 25 and now I'm 40. So I've had a good amount of them because I'm that person who says, I'm not going to wait 5 years. I'm not going to wait 10 years. Put me on the 2 or 3 year cycle. Yeah. Right. And so I do them fairly often compared to most people. And, today it's way better than when I started as far, I can have a piece of toast. I'm like, why did I ever think a piece of toast was going to be so fantastic? But like the day before now, I can have a piece of toast.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I don't
Can you really?
Well, depending on the prep you have. And I don't have to stop, I don't have to start drinking the stuff until 5 p.m. I mean, it used to be as soon as you woke up. Now they got a pill.
You don't have to gag yourself with all that liquid anymore.
Yeah, but the pills sometimes can get you too. So either way, it doesn't matter. None of it's as bad as the alternative, right? Yeah. So, I'm like, get out there and do it and let's go. I mean, we do a lot of things, especially these days, right, that are uncomfortable.
But that's the worst. But the procedure's not uncomfortable at all.
The procedure's nothing.
You go in, you're talking to the doctor. Next thing you know, you're asleep because you forget what you were talking about.
Count down from 10, 10.
Yeah, gone. And
that's it.
You wake up and you're laying in a room like, what'd they do to me, So
that's right. You get to see some really weird pictures.
Yeah.
And that's it. Hopefully that's it. I'll never forget taking my dad, when I first started having scopes, my dad, started going and he had 12 polyps the first time, and it's like, okay, like if there was ever a sign for my brothers and I to be like, oh, it's not just your mom, your dad had 12 polyps. And he has had polyps multiple times. He has been clear the last few, but I mean, that's where it's at, I mean, that's the beginning of colon cancer. And
how old is he?
Today he's 72.
And your dad is how old?
78.
And you said just now that this is his first one he's ever had. Mm-hmm. And my dad is 74. He's having one in a few weeks. Back then dads were considered, macho and I'm not going through all that. I'm not going to the doctor. We got to get past that.
My thing was when my mom was diagnosed when I was 18. She passed when I was 21. And when she passed away, I was her caregiver. My dad loved her to death, and they were married 20 years, but he was a terrible caregiver. So I took care of her, and then when she died, I kind of had like a hole, and I was like, I don't know what to do with myself anymore. And so my dad's always been super healthy, other than the fact that he's overweight. But that's when I found out he was like 74 then. And I was like, you were supposed to get a colonoscopy at 50 and you've never gotten one? He was like, nah, whatever.
I live this long.
Yeah.
I mean, I can hear it.
So then I kind of jumped on, okay, now I'm your caregiver and let's do all this stuff. So
you sign him up for 2 or 3 times a week, don't you?
He
for
has
something?
a dermatology appointment tomorrow.
See, I mean, well, and then that thing happens to you, right? And we
Yeah.
can all relate, unfortunately, where you lose one parent and then the fear of losing the other, right? You know, and that's crazy, and you don't want it to consume you, but obviously that's a concern. And I mean, I've seen counselors in my life, and they've said, you know, you lose a parent at a young age like that, and it sets you up for every relationship the rest of your life with the fear of losing someone.
Well, I mean,
or
I have
being
other
left
siblings, and they're in their 50s, and I love them to death, but they don't care. Not that they don't care, I guess, but they would not care if Dad went to the doctor ever again. Whereas I'm like, nope, that mole looks weird on your face. You're going to the dermatologist.
Oh, me too. I'm like, let me see what's growing on your back.
Yep.
Oh, you need to have that looked
He
at.
got his booster last week. He's got to go to the cardiologist next week.
I'll send her a text. Hey, we got some things coming up this afternoon. You available? Well, me and my dad said, what's wrong with him? He's in the doctor's office. What's wrong with nothing? I just told him he had to have this done.
Right. Prevention.
Prevention.
But, you know, you said, and it popped into my mind, you said us men, you know, we're macho and we don't need that.
Supposed to be. Yeah.
But how more macho can you be than making sure you're here to lead your family?
I'm not saying it's right.
No, I know.
I'm just saying the historical thought process has got to change.
Yeah,
so.
right. But it's that flip the script
It
thing.
is.
You know, how much more macho could you be than I'm going to make sure I'm here to protect my family and be here longer?
Well, for years it was
them.
almost like a cry of I don't know, I hadn't been to the doctor in 10 years, you know? I'm like, okay, are you proud of that? Do you know what might be going on in your body that 10 years that you've just been ignoring?
Right.
But we've always had that thought, not me. I'm like, I feel bad. I'm going to the doctor.
Right.
And I'm not putting up with it.
It's a society thing, right? It's no different than the other kind of cliche things that we talk about in society with men do this and women do this and kids do this. And the reality is blanket statements are not okay.
No, it's not. Not anymore.
But I think that the thing that you do, which is so excellent, is you make sure you're out there and you're on different platforms, and especially in our city. I mean, people see a Cancer Sucks shirt and they say, oh, you know Shirley's Way? Like, yeah, Mike's my man. You know,
That's
he's
hilarious.
my friend, and him and Jenny are awesome. And but, you know, it's so important, more than even just, you know, finding that story and reaching that story, is this just you put your name out there and you talk about things and you make it personal, you know, my mom and we've done this, and you're just an ordinary guy who's working and raising a family and got a great wife and kids, and you find time to make it a priority. And I think that means so much to our community. And I know that you don't like to be kind of honored or talked well about, but it's so true, the difference you're making. And I hope you, with all the discouragement out there, that you don't ever lose that light of hope to keep going, because it has touched so many people.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, I honestly, I don't think about that. But it's, I get down, and we both do. We'll sit here and talk, and we'll run into somebody that's really struggling. But when you're able to make that payment for somebody or whatever, it kind of gives you a little more inspiration, because it feels good to be able to do something like that.
Well, and that is a real benefit to people, whereas research is extremely important, obviously, and prevention is extremely important. But when I'm in the trenches and I need something, you know, being able to pay for my kids to eat is way more important.
But
today.
you know, and you're right, and I'm not knocking. And we've had these conversations about research and all that stuff. A lot of those things are funded by corporations and huge dollars, and they're getting their money.
Right.
I had a friend that walked into a Cancer Society's organization one time and dropped $10,000 on their desk, and they were excited and happy, and we raised $10,000, and they said, you know, the person looked at me like, thanks. No, you did a great job or nothing, because that doesn't mean a lot to them, because they get $1 million grants from large corporations. But $10,000 means a huge difference to us, because that's about 10 or 12 rent or mortgage payments for a patient, you know, and that's really the difference that we're seeing is most of these large organizations, research are funded by corporations.
Sure. And, you know, and as you know and have said, there's room and need for both, right?
Absolutely.
But if you are wanting to take your hard-earned $25 and make a difference, making a difference with Shirley's Way is where the impact is going to be larger with that, you know, that donation. And people always say, you know, anything helps, $5 here, $5 there. And it's true. I mean, it adds up really quickly. But, for me, if I'm choosing, it's no different really than supporting a local business owner, right?
Yeah, or ball team or something
right,
like
or
that.
ball
Yeah,
team,
yeah.
I mean, I'm a Cardinal fan, but
Yeah.
if I'm going to donate my $100, I'd rather do it to my son's up and coming soccer league, right?
Absolutely.
Or something. So, when I can see a presence of Shirley's Way in the community and I know firsthand what they're doing, what you're doing, that's certainly, if I'm going to make a choice, that's certainly where my money is going to go.
Did y'all
Because
hear
like you
that?
said, and sorry, Mike, I don't have more money, but
No.
like I said, and you're right, corporations and grants and even politics and things, give us lobbyism, gives a lot of money to different organizations. And I can get real pissed off about the funding for childhood cancer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you all really can. There's just such a disparity. And, when I was at the Colon Cancer Prevention Project, some of us people, not necessarily their people, but some of us volunteers talked a lot about, the breast cancer awareness and how, the reason that that's so large is because someone decided one day they were going to talk about it and they kept moving forward, and I hope one day that all cancers get that type of awareness, recognition, treatment. But certainly colon cancer, is so on the rise, very unfortunately, and very much at a younger age. Even they lowered the screening age, but even Amanda wouldn't have been in that screening age.
No, she sat here and told us 2 people and she named off had stage 4 and they're under not even 30 yet.
Right.
So, where's the outrage? Those people need to be tested.
That's right. And I will say that the more I started working with the colon cancer community, the more you saw that a lot of doctors, it's IBS. Oh, it's irritable bowel syndrome. Oh, you've probably got a hemorrhoid. Oh, you've probably, they weren't aware as much of the risk. Some were, but not a lot, And so I always say you have to advocate. If your doctor says no, move on.
Yeah.
You don't have any loyalty to anyone but yourself and your family. So if this doctor says, no, I think you're good, let's wait it out. Don't.
A month can be a game changer on life or death.
Well,
Absolutely.
it was 2 months for your mom, right? February to April? She got a clean bill of health in February?
Correct. Exactly. And now, granted, back then they didn't do,
Right.
A bunch of scans and things. That was mostly blood work. But still, I mean, that can change. You hear the stories all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, there was this tumor. Oh, it's gone. Oh, there was nothing. Now it is. You just don't know. And so it's our responsibility to stay on top of our health for sure. And we trust doctors, and we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I'm saying they're humans too, and they know what they know, and it goes by their experience and their expertise. And so, a general practitioner and internist doesn't always know like a gastroenterologist would.
Right.
Get one on the books and go have a workup.
Mm-hmm.
There's no problem with that for sure.
Well, your mom didn't want to hurt feelings, right?
No, I told her we're getting a second opinion, and Wendy got her in at the Brown Cancer Center, and she's like, well, I really hate to do that to that doctor. He's been so nice to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, he just told you you're going to die. You going to sit here and take that, or are you
Right.
going to do anything about it?
Right.
Unfortunately, he was right.
Yeah.
But but she just didn't want a second opinion because she didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Right.
But you lost your mom at 14, and you briefly touched on that. Kelly's lost her mom at 21, and she's got about 35 hovering aunts that run around, and anything she's got a question, she's got a group of women to pick from, and that's an important part and time of life for a young lady. To lose their mom. Did you have any female figures in your life that you could go and ask questions to about certain things?
I have. I mean, I've always been so blessed to have
But
amazing
you're pretty independent
grandmothers.
too, though. So
I'm independent, but I build relationships. I'm a relationship builder. I always have been, to the point that sometimes it drives people crazy because I'm like, you got to reach out, you got to touch someone, you got to find out how they're doing, you got to be intentional. And I'm not always wonderful at it, but I try. I had 2 wonderful grandmothers. I mean, just amazing. Wouldn't trade them for anything. Very, I come from a family of women, my grandmothers, that, they're going to talk about the hard stuff and they're going to have those difficult conversations and they're going to have fun, but they're going to tell you about yourself. My mom's mom was the first female deputy sheriff in Jefferson County.
really,
Wow.
So I mean, she wasn't taking your crap, and you knew it. Now, for us, we could do anything we wanted, as long as we said yes, ma'am. We had to have manners. But she was a strong lady, and my dad's mom raised 8 children, and 7 of them boys, and worked her tail off, never working outside of the home. So well, she did, but not once she started having kids. I mean, they were strong women, and I was very blessed to have them until I mean, not too terribly long ago. They've both been gone a little over 10 years. So.
Yeah, it's huge. I've got 2 girls, obviously, you know that, but I'll walk in sometimes and they'll stop talking. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Well, I just need to talk to mom about something. But if you don't have that, it's just, and that happens more than not.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my poor dad bought more feminine products than any man probably has and never cared a thing about it. Yep. But there's a lot of guys Drew probably wouldn't do that. I mean, my husband, it makes people uncomfortable. I always say that if I had to lose my mom, I had the best option for a double parent. If she wouldn't have passed, I would have still had an amazing dad. He's always been there. He's always shown up.
If I've met him, I don't remember it.
You've met him, but not long conversations, I'm sure. But he is an excellent, amazing man who always shows up and is always there for the small or the big or he's picking Parker up right now from school from his half day.
I think my dad hung the moon.
Yeah, and I have amazing in-laws. I mean, my mother and father-in-law are always there too, and I think that I am very close to her, and that's probably a result of my mom not being here, not that she wouldn't have been an awesome resource or friend for me, but I think you cling, right? You cling on to people that fill that spot. And I was always really, really reluctant to act like anyone could fill that spot because they can't, right?
It's tough. It really is.
Can't, but they certainly help that. And I was so mad. My dad's mom said to me one time, I know you miss your mom, but you don't miss her like your daddy does. And I thought, how dare you say that to me? I'm a kid and this is awful. And today, being married and raising kids and understanding what that statement truly meant of, it's not just someone you love, it's your partner, it's your money, it's your job, it's your finance, it's your parenting and home owning and partnership and that's huge and my dad can still tear up and there's a lot of things that have changed in his life and our life since she's been gone, but
you as you get older and you get married, you have plans of doing things together once your kids get older, because when you got kids and they're going through school, you basically throw 18 years of your life to side and do everything wrapped around the kids, and then hopefully you all can find that spark again and travel and do things together. And he didn't get to have that experience, so.
Yeah, and he, it's hard too for other people that have come into his life who don't understand that commitment necessarily to his family, and he's never wavered on that. So I greatly appreciate that as well. And I'm the only girl and the baby, and so I win, right? My brothers have been aggravated about that for years, but I think it has certainly allowed us to have a relationship as a father and daughter that a lot of dads and girls have, but we've gone a little extra, I would say, just because he has had to fill that void, And I would always say, when mom was pregnant, did she have this issue or
that's me right now?
With her anxiety, I have struggled with anxiety big time myself, anxiety and depression.
She had that too.
She had that. What did that look like? What did it really, and she would lay in the bed sometimes and wait for the furnace to cut off because, she was worried about everybody going to sleep, she didn't ever want my brothers and I to ride in the same car unless we were with her because, she couldn't lose us all at the same time, things like that where I know that her anxiety really was very present at different times. And I hate that because I've struggled with that myself. But, that's where my faith life comes in. And I know we've talked some about that too, Mike. But, when Amanda was diagnosed, when I look back at that, it was not a coincidence in my mind that she knew my mom, loved my mom. My mom was her second mom, and she experienced that, with her. Obviously, it's very different as an adult.
Yeah.
But the fact that, and then I was a little, you talk about questioning God. Oh, my word. When my best friend of 30 years got that diagnosis, the same as my mom, I thought, really, God? Really? Come on, man. Really?
Yeah.
But, I think some things prepare us and that's kind of how we looked at it. And watching my mom go through treatment and then watching Amanda go through treatment, it was a very different situation. I was in a very different place. I was much more of hopefully a support for Amanda than I was for my mom.
More
right.
of a caregiver and helper with Amanda, I would say.
I mean, you try, but she's pretty strong. She didn't need a whole lot of that. And her mama rocked that roll out. But, I tried to support where I could. But, my mom had gone through that. And then me volunteering with the Colon Cancer Prevention Project, and then obviously Amanda as a support joining along, she got a lot of, knowledge about colon cancer before it was ever her journey from that too, right? Just things coming, across your airwave that you've read it or seen it, or, oh, I volunteered at that function, or whatever. Just, I just don't believe in those kinds of coincidences.
I remember one of you all posting after it was public that Amanda was sick, and it was basically talking about what you just said, is she has been along this journey with me for years. So what are the crazy odds of her having the same disease my mom had? So,
yeah.
Well, it's crazy. It's the, I don't know. I just think they should screen people more. But, you talked about your faith. I'm always open to discussion about that. But, and we actually had a pastor in here, which he's struggling right now. He's sick. But, we talked about it. And I've just always got questions about that. And, of course, everybody does.
Sure.
And, I think there's some sort of ulterior or an extra person up there. But like when Pastor Pat was here, I don't envision the Great Oz and the Wheel of Fortune in the what's the movie?
Wizard
of Oz.
That movie. I don't see the Great Oz up there controlling everything that it happens exactly to everybody way people believe. And but faith is good. It helps you get through the tough times, especially.
Sure.
Yeah. So has your dad done well? Like I said, I think I may have met him. Did he ever get remarried or anything?
No, he didn't. He didn't, and that's okay. I think I look at some of my friends whose fathers have been remarried, and I think, man, that has to be tough. I hate to think of my dad not having a companion.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, that always is something for me that I wish that was part of his story, if that's what he wanted. And he's dated people in between and different things with his life. But I never had somebody come and try to take that spot. And I've seen some of my friends struggle with that. And like I said, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you feel kind of selfish. You don't want your person you love to go through life, right, without a partner. But at the same time, it's kind of been like, well, if it happens, whatever. But if not, I don't have to worry about that. And today, obviously, it's been lots of years, so that's different. But at the time, that was a concern for sure.
Yeah.
How was that going to look, and what was that going to be like? But I'll tell you, my mom was no longer here, and that was obviously life-changing. But as far as the rest of the family dynamics, we all stayed right there together. I mean, my mom's parents and us and my dad, and
That's good.
he was like their child too. I mean, it was just, we were super close all the time. So,
Well,
we didn't lose
sure.
that component,
Yeah.
which tends to happen sometimes. So,
Well, thanks so much for coming in today. It was interesting. I'd always wanted to kind of talk to you about that. And then, I can't imagine losing a parent that early in life. But you've done very well. So.
well, thank you. There's some ugly days in there still, I mean, it can still hit you even though it's been so long. You think, 25 years going on 26. Obviously it's different, right, than fresh grief. But, there's still times that it'll smack you in the face and you're like, what in the world? I thought I'd processed all that. But,
Well, it's hard to realize, and it's been a long time for you, but even when I go over my dad sometimes, it's been since 2013, and I still feel like she's going to walk down the hallway because my mom, the thing is she loved to feed people. So anytime we go over, she'd start cooking something. And I just feel like sometimes she's just going to walk out, and it's not going to happen again.
It's not. And, you say that. I didn't even bring up that I have lived in the same house my entire life. My husband and I bought the house for my dad. So, for 10 years, I'd sit at the dining room table and think, occasionally I'd hear my mom's footprints in her high heels walking down the sidewalk to come in the back door, because that's what she did. I mean, she was a professional that worked in the court system here. And so, literally for at least 10 years, I think here she's going to come. She's just on a business trip. I mean, your mind plays such tricks on you.
Does.
And I remember as a teenager, I used to think if I was doing something bad, oh, well, she's in a meeting with God or something. She won't see it this time. I mean, just the crazy things that you think about. But I remember thinking just all those crazy, weird things.
Yeah, but I'd rather, if you get in trouble, deal with my mom than my dad. So
Right. Well, fortunately and unfortunately today, he knows all those things that I did. But, like you said, you live in the place and you still can see them right there after all these years. So I don't know. It's tough, but I'll never regret that's my mom and that's my story. I'll obviously always want her longer, but I think that things prepare you and I go back to my faith, typically God uses what we learn in the valley to help other people. And I won't say that I've been a big help to other people for any reason, but I think that it certainly helps you to be more empathetic and understand that there's a lot of things people are going through. And when you hear the word cancer, you can know more about what's coming their way, which is not fortunate, but it helps you to be more of a support, hopefully, for people.
I have to bite my tongue sometimes when I hear diagnosis, is because I know either could go well or it's not going to go well, and I don't want to give them any discouraging news.
No.
But we've seen it enough where we know it's like it's not going to end well.
Yeah. But there's also that time, like my grandmother, my mom's mom, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. She wasn't supposed to live to see my niece born, and she lived 4 more years, and when she died, she was cancer free.
Good.
I mean, you just don't ever know, right? I mean, COVID will teach us that. Different bodies react different ways to different things. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an honor to talk about my mama and experiences. So
we
thanks
appreciate
for all you all do, Mike.
Thanks for sharing so much. So, Kelly, how can people help Shirley's Way?
You can start by donating $10 a month. No,
if you're a business,
if you're
businesses are showing off.
month.
Yeah, they're starting to donate $100 a month. A lot of small businesses are rallying around us. So.
Yeah, no, but for the end of 2021, we're just looking for 1,000 $10 monthly donors. So head over to our website at shirleysway.org and support us as your charity of the end of the year, I guess we could say.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk to y'all next time.
See ya.
Wow, it's crazy. Yeah.